Thank you for attending this webinar, which as Outvise, we have the pleasure to host. The webinar is going to be about how to become more agile and what is the role of HR in an agile transformation. For this, on top of myself, let me just briefly introduce myself. So I'm Alex Collard. I'm one of the co-founders at Outvise. We do have the pleasure to have as guests Khalid Rabbie and Bradford. So let me briefly introduce themselves. So Khalid is an agile coach and consultant. He has extensive experience supporting different companies on transforming themselves and becoming more agile. And he's currently supporting Orange Business Services, managing an international team of program and project managers. And then we do also have Chris. Chris is truly a pure HR or people professional. She has been involved in HR roles for the last 20 years. She has strong expertise in scaling and developing organizations. And currently, she's the HR director at Gamma Telecom, a very innovative and fast-growing UK telecom company. And we were also meant to have with us today Haikam Zaki, but he's finally got some personal issues, last-minute issues, and was unable to attend. So we're going to be the three of us. Yeah. So, but before moving into the core content of the webinar, so discussing about how to become more agile and the role of HR in this agile transformation, let me just provide you a 5-minute description of who we are ourselves. I mean, Outvise. For this, I do have just 4 slides that I want to share with you. So, who's Outvise? Yeah, Outvise, we are what is called an online talent platform. Our main role is to connect talent with clients that are looking for talent and to provide the right agility to our clients to be able to be more competitive and to find the right people to deploy their projects or complement their organizations. We do this in a very innovative and special way. As being a digital talent platform, we do have, of course, a digital approach to our business. So on one side of the platform, as of today, we do have more than 31,000 vetted independent consultants in the businesses or in technology-related businesses. So all people coming from technology environments, call it telecoms, media, technology, or digital businesses. And on the other side, we do have clients that are looking for those types of independent professionals. And through technology, we do connect them in usually no more than 48 hours. So in a very agile way, our clients then can bring the right people into the organizations without no hiring, no training, no time delays. And we do it at a global scale. However, we are currently very much focused on Europe, Middle East, and Africa. What are the typical things we do for our clients? We, as said, we usually do add bandwidth, talent bandwidth, to be able to execute their projects. We do fill expertise gaps when they are looking for some experts they don't have on board, and we accelerate execution of key projects and key programs. We do it for many clients across the globe, especially Europe, Middle East, and Africa, especially again in technology-driven sectors. And we do serve both end clients, such as Rakuten, Oracle, O2, Vodafone, as well as consultancies, such as Oliver Wyman, Ernst & Young, Capgemini, and also both large clients, again, big names such as Vodafone, as well as medium-sized clients. So having done this short presentation about ourselves, let's now jump into the core of today's content, which is, again, discussing how to become more agile and what is the role of the HR organization in becoming more agile. So let me start with you, Khalid. Yeah? Let's talk about HR agility. And when we think about agile, I mean, this sounds very much as an IT thing. Yeah? How in your view, how does this apply to HR and organization transformation. What is HR agility as opposed to more IT agility?
Okay, first of all, thanks for having me, and I'm glad I'm here on the panel with Chris as well. So thanks a lot for having me here, and of course for everybody who has joined so far. Well, HR agility has been a topic of interest for many organizations when we come to talk about transformation and so on. So here I'll actually reflect with a question to the audience. And feel free, guys, to write on the chat what you think an answer to this question may be. When do you guys engage with HR? When do you see HR in your companies? Just, I want you to tell me, do you see them all the time? Do you see them at the beginning or at the end? Where do you see them, or when do you meet the HR? So if you could write on the chat, that'd be great. I want to see what you would say.
Sorry, as Khalid is mentioning, I forgot to mention that if you have any question, don't hesitate to write your question in the Q&A section.
So when do you guys see the HR? When do you engage with them? The recruitment process, yes. Where else? Do you see them otherwise? I only got Dennis. Disciplinary procedures. Okay, that's a good one. When fired, when training. Only at the job offer. Yeah, that's exactly what HR agility is all about. That when we talk about HR, we talk about human resources. And if I'm only seeing someone, if I'm fired or in the procedures or in the hiring process, then I'm only treating that person as a resource. I'm not treating it as a human resource. What about the gap that happens between the hiring process and the firing process, or the let go process, or the resigning process? What happened in the middle? That is where the culture fits. And HR agility is about two major factors: the HR for Agile and Agile for HR. So how they contribute to the Agile transformation in terms of managing the culture, because as we always say in agility, it's not about a process, it's not a methodology, it is always about a mindset and a culture, to set up behaviors that are set. So to do that, we need to manage the in-between, between the hiring process and whenever they're leaving or they're being fired or whatever the case is going to be. And there's a part where they themselves working in Agile mode to deliver products faster, because at the end, it's all about them being a strategic partner to the organization in terms of reforming how leadership base their collaboration, how they become more purposeful, how they become a more purposeful employer through being a strategic partner, and how they can work in Agile mode, and all working into how they map the company values with the Agile values. And this is where HR comes in. So this is what, you know, in the ballpark, what HR agility is all about.
Thank you, Khalid. We are today discussing 6 boosters, and the name of today's webinar is about these 6 boosters. Could you mention what are those 6 boosters? Then I understand that you're gonna be elaborating on them, yeah. But just at the beginning of the session, just to understand what those 6 boosters are.
Okay, well, but basically the HR, when we talk about Agile transformation has to start with the culture. It's not just about implementing a specific process or a specific methodology and so on. So number 1 is how the HR are the pioneers in Agile organization designs and HR practices. So the way we formulate the practices, the way we organize or we design the organizational factor of the culture, that is number 1. Number 2 is about the leadership governance. Usually we have leaders governing leaders, but anybody outside that cycle? No. So the HR or the booster is how we rethink. So the leadership governance and the rethinking of the leaders and what a leader should be, and developing the Agile leadership practices. That's the second one, and how we deliver cadence and we deliver what we call organic leadership. Okay, that is the second booster. The third booster is how they support the behaviors and they foster the Agile mindset across the different teams, and how they influence the hybrid Agile practices. That's the third booster. And then we have, of course, the career paths, how they develop the career paths based on the talents that they have internally, and what we say we create the value-based roles, and how everybody contributes to what value do they have and how they contribute to the business. What value do I have? What do I deliver? And that's something that has been lost. We were treating people with KPIs, with objectives, but not the actual value that they deliver. And that is number 4. Number 5 is the adaptive governance, in terms of how are we more flexible? How are we more accountable? How are we more strategic to how we take Agile as a mindset and how we transform, rather than just taking it as a methodology. So number 5 is the adaptive governance. And then number 6 is the performance metrics. How do we track the performance, and how do we create what we call the Agile Kpis? Those are
very interesting, and we will have some time to go in more detail in each of those boosters. But before doing this, Chris, a question for you. As an HR director, I mean, what so far has been your experience in being involved in Agile transformations, and what has been the role of HR in those transformations?
Thank you, Alex, and hello everybody. Really lovely to. I won't say see you. It would be nice to see you, but it's nice that you're here and you can text us while we're going through. So the question, what experience do I have? Yeah, I can talk about years of experience, but actually it's the quality of the experience.
1 minute.
I'm working with organization transformation in small startups, in private equity-backed ventures, in large corporates, which are complex and multinational, and particularly in the sphere of technology, IT services, and those kind of sectors, but not exclusively. So what kind of transformation? It could be exponential growth, and I mean in the literal sense of doubling in size every year. It's also been, in my experience, turnarounds and restructures. And there's always a common theme of an urgency about it. There's a pace about it because the competition are aggressive, or the company is on the brink of financial collapse, or market forces working against it. So there's always an imperative to come in and make an immediate transformational impact. So my involvement, I'm glad to say, is not really on the, it's not on the fire, well, it's hiring and firing, but it's all the other things in between. And I'm normally sitting on the executive or on the board or on the board committee. So there's a chance to influence the way that the company thinks and behaves. My involvement is to really develop plans with that company for the quick wins. People need to see something happening now, but also to build out the longer term strategy. It's to develop identify and develop those critical capabilities. I mean, organization capabilities, leadership capabilities, people capabilities, which will take the business through its next phase. It's to critically build the right leadership and the right leadership framework and capabilities. And I think most important of all, and Khalid has referenced this, I'm an agitator, so I get underneath the culture and I often ask the difficult questions. And I would say you need to be courageous to call out those behaviors which are destructive and which are working against the culture, and to hold the mirror up to the board and the exec team and identify where those elements exist and really to root them out and to make sure that the company is doing what the company says it's doing, because everybody knows values on the wall make a nice poster, but I would rather have no values on the wall, but people understand in their hearts what the behaviors are that is expected. And we have to be consistent with the application of those. If people are to trust, and trust is probably at the premium in a business, do we trust our leaders? Are they credible? Do we trust them to do the right thing? And that's my experience so far.
Okay, very, very interesting. Thank you very much, Chris. I think that it is now clear for everyone that HR should take the lead and should be a central part in any agile transformation in a company. And Chris was starting to mention some of the key things that should be done on top of just putting some posters on, even more important than putting some posters with the cultural values. But from your side, Khalid, what does this mean in practical terms? What does this mean, that HR should interview people for agility skills, or is this something else?
No, it's not about a ones and zeros. It's not a digital thing. Either you're agile or not agile. But I conducted an experiment that was like, I think a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. And I already came with the HR agility concept, but I wanted to solidify my findings. So I started applying for different jobs and going for interviews. To me, it was not a waste of time. I was not going to actually accept any of those offers, even if they sent me an offer. But I wanted to evaluate, and there were different sectors, by the way, in different companies, to evaluate how the interviewing process has evolved since the early 2000s, when I was still looking for a job and I was trying to mature through. The surprising part was they haven't changed. The same exact questions that were asked in the early 2000s are being asked the same way today. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Well, actually change happens every 6 months. So you should actually ask me, where do I expect myself to be the next 6 months? So since the interviewing process is exactly the same, you are sending me a message as a candidate that your culture has not changed since the early 2000s. And I'm expecting actually from the early 90s. So the process of linking your internal customer, which is your employees, and changing your interviewing process to what fits that current culture, that is what HR agility is all about. That's what I wanted to prove. And I was able to prove it. If you go into an interview today, they will say it's the exact same sequence. Introduce yourself. And then what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? All questions that if you go online, you'll find so many videos coaching you and telling you how can you respond to these questions. So that means that the whole process has become corrupt into just passing those questions, you go on to the next level. And then you're being tested for your technical skills when you go on to the manager of that specific team. So it's going to all come down to your skills, not your ability or your behavior or your attitude, because you can always practice that attitude. You can always stand in front of the mirror, make sure that you're smiling, make sure that you're presentable. You can always practice these things. But your true nature, this is how we reformulate, and that's what we deliver in the diploma of the HR agility, is what do you need to change? What type of questions will actually contribute to identifying exactly which value? So in the agile values and agile principles, when you ask a specific question, you change your attitude. You change the attitude that whoever is coming to you for an interview is actually a customer. He is not someone who is needing you. You need him more than they need you. So the mentality that I go to an HR and the HR feel that they have the power, that's what we need to change. That's the mindset we're trying to change. That actually when they come, smile and greet them and make them feel comfortable. When you make them feel comfortable, you'll bring out their true attitude, their true behavior. Whatever they've been practicing going in with a template, they will open up to you. So you actually get to see their actual attitude, their actual personality. Good or bad, that's not the discussion. But you'll bring out the best and the worst in them. So at that time, you will properly evaluate as an HR person if that person actually fits in their culture or not. That's how the interviewing process should go, or the change from an HR agility perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting. Let's take the importance of these values and attitude to the leadership level. Yeah, because Chris, you were mentioning previously that it's so important to understand to what extent we can trust the leaders in the company. So based on your experience, what are the most important qualities, call it values, attitude, that the leaders need to have in today's environment?
Well, I'm sure that if we stacked up all the books that are written on leadership, they'd probably reach from here to the moon. So there's a whole industry just around leadership, how to be a great leader and what you need to do. And yet, at the same time,
what does this mean? Yeah.
At the same time, how many leaders, would you follow? And the question I always ask is why should anyone be led by me? Why should anyone be led by you? And so, I mean, there are many, many qualities that I could list. I think for me, just on a personal level, there's 5 or 6 things, but let's start with self-awareness. You can't lead other people until you understand yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, you have to kind of make peace and understand what your own capabilities are, and understand where you're starting from. Khalid talked about the emphasis on, you know, we have HR. I never call myself HR. I'm actually a very reluctant HR person. I'm a people person. I'm a chief people officer, whatever you call it. But the human in human resources is not just in HR. I think the quality everyone is crying out for in our leaders is humanity. We have people, and I would say in particular now, we're talking to you on a Zoom. 3 years ago, we might have been talking to you in a nice sunny room in Barcelona or in a nice office in London, and you'd have come together and we could have seen you. And people have gone to hell and back this last 2 years. Yeah, professionally, personally, it's been a very difficult time. Those leaders who are human understand that first and foremost, we are all people. We all have things going on. You know, in this lockdown, people will have lost family members, people will have gone through a separation, a divorce, people will have struggled with their children to try and keep them educated. People will have perhaps been, you know, having children, trying to have children unsuccessfully. The whole range of human emotion is there. And for me, the leaders that we trust and respect are those that first and foremost understand that it's about being human. And that doesn't necessarily mean being soft on people, or you know, be overlooking behavior, but it just means first and foremost think about how you would want someone to behave if this was your family member. When my HR team have to make a disciplinary or an exit, there's only one test I ask them. When you're sitting in front of someone and you know you have to fire them, if you think about that person being your sister, your brother, your mother, your father, how would you like someone to handle their exit? And if you bear that in mind at the first and foremost, you will genuinely communicate to that person that although the decision is a very difficult one, you're treating them with the respect and courtesy that you would expect to be extended. So I think humanity. And I suppose allied to that is being authentic. You know, we talk about authentic leadership and it's a bit of a label, but what that means is, you know, be yourself. There's a lovely phrase, be yourself, everybody else is taken. There's only one person that can be you. And, you know, when we start to bring those qualities, we stop becoming a robot leader and we start becoming, yeah, you know, this person is the leader that always has a funny joke. This person is the leader that's always serious, but there's no point trying to imitate a template of what you think a leader should be. Be your authentic self. The fourth thing I think for me is about being accessible. I was reading just the other day, actually, I'm going to read this to you. It's Colin Powell, who was you know, the US general, wrote, as they all do, their memoirs and their leadership thoughts. But being accessible, I think, is the key to opening up so much understanding of what's really going on in the culture, what's really going on in the organization. If people feel they can openly share with you without repercussion, that's a very powerful tool. And Colin Powell said, the day that soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them, or they have concluded that you do not care. Either case is a failure of leadership. If this were a litmus test, the majority of CEOs would fail. Number one, they build so many barriers to upward communication that the very idea of someone lower in the hierarchy looking to the leader for help is ludicrous. Two, the corporate culture they foster defines asking for help as weakness or failure. So people cover up their gaps, the organization suffers accordingly. Real leaders make themselves accessible and available. They show concern for the efforts and challenges faced by their staff, even as they demand high standards. And they will create an environment where problem analysis replaces blame. And I think, you know, the last quality I'd say is sometimes as leaders, we feel we have to have the answers. You know, someone comes to you, what should we do here? You know, what's the solution? What's the solution? I would turn that around and say, more important than having the answers is knowing the right questions to ask. Start with asking the difficult questions, get to a statement of what is the real problem. And often the real problem is not what it seems to be, it's other things. So having the skill to continually ask challenging questions to others. And I think finally, be a servant, be a coach. You know, you're there to enable and facilitate people to do their best work and to thrive and to flourish. And if they feel that, you know, you are enabling them and supporting them at all levels, then the organization will thrive. Absolutely.
Super, brilliant. Thank you very much. You need to send me this sentence from Colin Powell. I think it was a very, very nice one, but yeah, very, very interesting. So as far as we are, I mean, we understand that HR should be centric, should take the lead in a agile transformation. We do understand that we need to bring the right people with the right values, not only with the right skills, into the organization. And we should have leaders that are human, authentic, and that ask the right question, not just the right answers. Yeah, so that's super. Imagine that we have all of these already in organization, the right leaders, quite good people. We are centric, sitting in HR to a transformation, and it comes to the time to change the culture, to move the culture to being more agile. So Khalid, where will you start as HR, as a HR coach, to start changing the culture of a company towards a more agile culture? What are the key levers you should be touching on?
That's a huge question.
That's a difficult one, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll capitalize on what Chris has mentioned in terms of authenticity. And we have a problem with the bureaucracy that we have across all levels. When we come to talk about a leader, of course, we always think about Martin Luther King, we think about Mahatma Gandhi, we think about Muhammad Ali, we think about Nelson Mandela. These are leaders who were authentic and they had a cause and so on. So usually people are thinking about a business leader to be the same. They will never be the same. Why? Because of a simple concept being said, the management by objectives. We are assigned certain objectives. And per person, we're assigned KPIs. And everybody has to meet those KPIs individually because they're put into a metric system where it's me versus you, although we are from the same team. So we're being asked to work as a team. However, I will be judged as a performance alone within a metric system. So it's either I will get the exceeding expectations and you will get the fully successful, or it will be the other way around. However, as leadership, we're encouraging people to work together. So we're actually building an internal competition. So what the HR needs to do here, because they are the ones responsible for the policies, procedures, and so on. And one of the practices was into how we manage leaders in terms of how are they becoming leaders. Meaning, when you come to ask people, why was this person appointed as a manager? Is it because he is senior, or maybe because he is really good at what he does, or is he good with people? Usually it's never that he's good with people. Usually it's the first two. It's either he knows how to get the job done, or he has been senior in the team for a while. That's why he became the manager. And believe it or not, this has been going for years and years and years. So when you come to look at startups, they don't have this problem because they're all working together to deliver a specific value. So it's value driven. And that's where agility comes in. Because Agile is all based on value delivery, what it's value driven. When you scale, the organization is scaled and it's really, really large. We have so many processes, the bureaucracy usually goes up. So we need to better control people. So how can we control them? Through having hierarchies. And in Agile, when we talk about hierarchies, we talk about what we call hierarchies of networks. So the hierarchy of networks here is basically how we build a culture where whoever is becoming the leader, the HR needs to start with coaching these people on how to become leaders. It's not through a training. No, they need to be constantly evaluated. There is a business objective. We're not saying we're going to eliminate that. But at the same time, they need to be the ones adjusting how people are going to be measured. That's up to them. If we're going to be measuring a leader, how is he going to be measured? Because through that bureaucratic cycle, who's evaluating this leader is another leader who has been promoted, who was also senior, who also got the job done. He was not good with people. So it keeps continuing along the chain that it's an everlasting cycle. So the HR lose control over this part, and usually as it gets bigger, it's harder for them to control. And it's not like the HR are usually the biggest department within the organization. Actually, they are very small. So whatever practices they build, they need to be very efficient. Like, for example, for surveys, when they measure the culture, they use surveys. That's becoming very outdated right now. Why? Because very simply, when you put in a survey and you're taking the whole organization, you'll be taking the average. So if the average is in the green area, we're good, we're fine, the culture is fine. So whoever small person has mentioned that I had one problem with my manager and it's causing me to be very distressed, it will be overlooked. So the next time the survey is done, they won't believe in it, so it will not become accurate, and it keeps propagating. So once it goes bad, or goes below the green area, or below that scale, then the HR will start looking. So one of the basic practices we use from lean approaches, which is what we call the Gemba walks. The Gemba walks is basically, it's a Japanese word for being in the place at a specific time. So HR, to move from their desk and randomly walk around the organization, have interviews with people, ask them, how do you feel? And do not take their name. So I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know any of your details. I just want to know your department and your job. That's it. And what do you think? What is, do you have any, and ask them the questions that you will probably put in a survey, and be genuine about it, be authentic. And from this, you'll have an actual feel of the culture. It's not about a survey. It's not about a questionnaire. When you do this on a regular basis, leaders will always be looking around them and trying to do their best, because they know that they cannot influence a questionnaire or a survey, that people are actually speaking to other people. I remember 2 years ago, I was in a large event, and all of the CEOs were there, all of the employees were there, and I was working with the company. And one of the top management people was speaking to me. The CEO of the branch I was working with came and stood right beside me to make sure that I did not say anything that could affect his branch. And that's the case when management are involved, when they don't want anything to be said bad about them. And usually we have the middle management, they are shielding all of what is down there, which is up there. So it's not that top management are evil. We're not saying this. But how do we govern this? Who is an outsider that could be neutral and actually come up with, well, we need to do something about the leadership in this department? It's the HR. They are the protectors of, I would say, the galaxy of an organization, but they are the ones, as Chris mentioned, they are the ones that should be there, should be authentic. They are the ones that should make sure that the culture is stable, not the leaders, because not all of them understand the magnitude of how people are affected by a certain attitude, by the work pressure, and so on, because the leader is under pressure as well. They're under pressure by their leadership, and their leadership is under pressure by their leadership. So who can make it happen? Who can make it happen? It's the HR. So this is how they start with the practice, with focusing on the leadership and working with the leadership to make sure that they have the proper tools, the proper knowledge, and the proper measurement tools to measure their progress as well. So that's where I would start, in getting to know the people, and people getting to know that the HR are there. We are not there during your interviewing process only, or when you're done, or just putting out a procedure or policy. We're there to see what represents value to you. As employees, we look what represents value to the customers. They are there to represent the value to the employees. So that's where I would put things as a practice.
Very interesting. And I like the way you describe that surveys, to understand what's the culture surveys are not working anymore. And at the end, you came to the same values that Chris was describing that are needed in a leader. I mean, you need to be accessible, authentic, human, and close to people to understand what's really happening. I mean, it's not through a survey that you will be able to identify what are the real issues or what's going on in the organization. And Chris, what will be your view on this? I mean, how you'll be able to understand what culture really is in an organization?
I'm glad. I didn't read anybody's notes, so I didn't know what Khalid was going to say, but I've written, the first thing is surveys don't work. Surveys don't tell you what the culture is. I mean, it's fine. It's fine as a benchmark. It's fine. You know, corporate want to do a survey, they can do a survey. How do we understand the culture? I think it's simpler than we want it to be. We talk to people. And I'll give you a specific case study of two companies I've worked at in the last year, and I've taken the same approach. So a small group of us on the exec got together and said, you know, how do we get underneath what's really going on? And I said, well, I want to get on a Zoom with the whole company, and I want to ask them if they'd like to start a conversation, which is high risk, okay, because we're talking 1,500 people. And as I said that, I was talking to them, I said again, you know, and I could see them on a Zoom, and I said, look, I can see you all sitting there at home. We're very good as a company at transmitting. We're always in transmit. We're communicating results. We're sending out our PowerPoints to you. What we're not very good at is a conversation. And what I want to know is, what's your experience working with us? What do you really think? What should we be doing better? They were looking for me to set out my people strategy. I said, no, I'm not going to set out any strategy until I understand where we're starting from. And we set up an inbox specifically for people to write in. They could write in anonymously. Most people chose to write in person. And the investment was absolutely amazing, because from that, and I've done this in 2 separate companies, it's been quite a lot of time to respond to people. It wasn't 1,500 people, it was maybe 50 people. But the important message was the other 1,450 felt that they could, if they wanted to. Yeah, and 50 people took it up. And so they either rang me, I said, here's my mobile number, you can ring me, or here's my email, you can email me. Here's the company special inbox, you can write some suggestions. And the conversations were, a market research company would say they were qualitative. They were qualitative, they were insightful, they were painful sometimes. It's hard to listen to some people's stories when they feel that you've established a trust with them. I had people crying on Zoom. I had people telling me stories about what's really happened to them 5 levels down. I would never have met those people. I could be the CPO for 5-10 years and I would never have met or heard those stories. And so what happens? You listen, you assimilate, you gather the themes. The board director said to me, how do I find out about employee engagement? And I told her about what we were doing. She said, will you come and share that with the board? And from those conversations, you then generate an action plan, but you have to go back to people and specifically say, you know, I've heard what you said, and here's what we're going to do about it. Or as sometimes I will do, I'll say to people, well, here's a problem you've identified. How will you help me to solve it? Because otherwise you end up in a situation where people bring you the problem and expect you to fix it. And sometimes you want to see that the initiative is also with your teams and your employees. How will you work with me to fix that? But the important thing is simply talk to people, have a conversation, and be prepared to listen to things you may find unpleasant, difficult, and hard. But that's where the value comes. I think secondly, how you understand, you know, a culture. You will find ambassadors in the business, and they may not be in obvious places. They probably won't have a director job title. They may not even have a manager job title, but they are the people that everybody listens to. Why? They're charismatic, they're sociable, they take it upon themselves to do things, to find things out. And those are the people that I will co-opt onto a special employee group to say, help me to deliver these messages, help me to bring the messages back to the central team so that we can continually listen and have an open, ongoing, it's not a one-off like a survey, it's an ongoing dialogue. And then we use our all hands briefing now to surface some of those issues and to explain if we can help, what we've done, if it's not possible to help, why, but what we will do to mitigate those circumstances. So people, the first time round, I say, you don't trust me. Why should you trust me? Because you've heard all this before. People say, yeah, you know, people around assets, and then they behave in a way which is completely at odds with that. So I said, wait and see what we do. And then next month you can decide whether you trust the messenger or not. And you build that trust over several months where you're continually listening, feeding back. I think, you know, the other thing you have to do is you have to be prepared to make tough decisions. I talked about this earlier, but if you hear things and you see things which are clearly toxic, and I use that word, you know, that word has been used to me about culture. People will see whether you're serious about the culture by the decisions you make. If you have to fire your top performing salesperson because that person's behavior is bullying and toxic, you must do it. Otherwise, you may as well not ask people or talk about culture, because people will say, yeah, but when it's somebody earning a lot of money or when it's somebody important, you will not make that tough call. And that's sometimes what does take courage as the HR leader. You have to face your exec team and say, guys, it's this decision or it's no decision, because that's what people are looking to you to do. And you talk about, you know, culture as a competitive advantage. People now, it's not just enough to have a salary and a job anymore. You know, people want meaning. They want to find a purpose in what they do, which is bigger than just the job they do. They want to feel connected to something that's more important, doing something in the local communities that we operate in, doing something in the physical environment around sustainability and climate. And there are all manner of things which, as you build your culture, you can start to use these things when you recruit. You can start to talk to people genuinely about the things that the company cares about. And what you find then is that your recruitment becomes easier, because people will automatically identify and latch on to those things. And the people to whom those things don't matter, they won't want to join you. So it's a win-win both ways. You don't want to attract everybody. You only want to attract those people who are, you know, vibrating to the same frequency that you are as a business, because then, you know, things can start to accelerate.
Very interesting. Definitely, fully convinced that surveys are only not even scratching the surface of the problems you may have in your culture. But then, Khalid also mentioned that in many companies the promotion process is broken because they do not really take into account the good fit with people. Yeah? And you may end up with the example you said, having your head of sales being a toxic person. So, on your view, Chris, how in this situation, how do you define a career path? How do you find a career path in an agile organization? Is it in fact possible to create a career infrastructure, or is it completely out of date?
I'm asked this question a lot, because every time I come into an organization, it's, oh, can you create career paths? And I say, no, I'm not going to do that, because it's too difficult, right? I think there are exceptions to that. So I think if you're in a professional services organization, legal, professional services, consulting, that there are clearly defined, you know, blocks of knowledge and competence that you have to achieve. In, you know, finance, there are qualifications to achieve. So it's more logical to have a structured progression where people build their expertise. For the majority of us, I think the reality is somewhat different. You know, I'm more interested in how we identify talent and how we move the talent around. So I think the first step is, in the first case, it's awareness of what's available. You know, people need to understand what projects are available, what new roles are being hired. And often the first step is just simply to have an email every Friday, which goes out to the business saying, here's our opportunities, permanent, secondment, temporary. We need 6 weeks of somebody to help with getting an induction program. Because people then can say, well, perhaps I could just second to that for a few weeks and build their expertise and build their organization connectedness through experiencing another project or another role. And I think secondly, careers are developed through having meaningful conversations with managers. And this is where the role of the manager for me is critical. You know, have the conversation. You don't need a form from HR. In fact, please don't have a form from HR. Have a development conversation where you sit with your direct reports, have a cup of coffee, make it informal. Say, tell me about you. Where do you want to be? Where do you see your career going? How can I support you in that? 80% of learning gets done on the job. We know this, it's a statistic. You develop through learning and doing and repeating. You develop through having a range of experiences. Often it's something simple like invite someone new to your team meeting so they can start to understand more about what your team does. There's an appreciation grows, they build their knowledge, their organization capability that way. And I think thirdly and finally, to create career paths, you have to take risks. You have to take risks with high potential people. You know who they are. You probably think that, you know, in some organizations, you have to reach a point of 10 years and then suddenly we might think you're ready for a promotion. People are ready much, much sooner than you think they are. And if you don't give them the opportunity and take a risk on them, somebody else from another organization will do. I'm only doing this job and where I am because early on in my career, two of my greatest managers took a massive risk. I was virtually new to the organization. I was junior and I was sent into things way, way above my pay grade, way above what I thought I was capable of, but they believed in me. And as a result, I rose to their expectation. And, you know, hopefully that's repaid that bet, as it were. But give your best people the opportunity. And maybe before you think you need to. But in terms of career structure, I mean, Khalid might have a different view. I think it's very difficult because things move so quickly that by the time you've written a structure and a path, you know, the world has changed, your requirements may have changed again.
That's very clear. Yeah, so yeah, fully agree with you that it's difficult as of today to have very well-defined career paths, and because I mean the world changing so quickly, the organization need to be very agile. And I like your concept about the need of taking risks, yeah, in an organization to allow people to develop and to move to upper responsibilities. But in this context of taking risks with the people, Khalid, what will be your view in HR governance? And you mentioned previously a concept of adaptive HR governance. Yeah, could you elaborate a little bit more on this, please?
Yeah, the word adaptive is what agility is all about. When we come to talk about the word agile, it's about how you move quickly, how you're more flexible. It's just a word in English language. We just made it, we branded it under so many methodologies and frameworks. It's just a mindset of how we think. So when we talk about career paths, if I'm going to capitalize on that, when we talk about HR agility, we don't define it as just a career path. It's what we deliver in terms of pool of talent, meaning usually we call it a pool of resources, and that's not that's what we're trying to change. Everybody has a role. For example, if I'm a project manager, so I'm under the title of a project manager. So you're only available to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I may have other talents as well that I may be useful to the organization. So why not take away the titles? It's not that I'm not taking you out of your grade, or I'm just not giving you your salary as you should. We're not doing that. But picture this with me. If we have project managers, program managers, and people from the implementation team, we have different people from different teams. Usually they are working on preset projects, okay, that are done by the organization. They are assigned to this project and they're working with it. Imagine that at that time, everybody knows their level of authority. So the project manager, for example, has authority over the whole project team, and he is telling them to do this, to do that. He's dealing with the customer, and he's shielding the rest of the team. So the structure is well known. Imagine the same people, if I ask them, okay, guys, you've been part of this project. How do you think we could do this better? At this time, I have completely diffused the authority. So people will start thinking as a team, reminding one another how it was and what could have we done better, and they'll start working together. So it's not about authority. It's about everybody displaying their true personality, what they think, their personal opinion, and so on. So imagine if we're doing the same in terms of all of the jobs. What talent do you have? So for example, we may have people who are junior, but they have a huge charisma. They don't mind standing in front of people. Maybe they're singers, maybe they're artists. They don't shy away from challenges and so on. Why don't I use that talent to say, well, you know what? you will be good in sales. Why don't you try it out? Go sit with the people from the sales. You have that talent. Go check it out. And they start using that talent into places that they could actually be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually ask people, what would you like to do? If you were not doing what you're doing today, what would you like to do? And what are your talents? Ask the right questions. As I'm going to capitalize also on what Chris mentioned, asking the right questions. So as a leader today, it should be clear to me as a leader, what do I need to ask my people to see how I can differentiate clearly? Because if you ask, and I say this with complete confidence, two questions, and I want you to go to your organization and ask them today. Ask any of your top leaders and your managers, what is the difference between hygiene factors and motivation factors, or the motivators and the hygiene factors? 90% will not know the difference between what is a hygiene factor and a motivation or motivational factor. They will not know the difference. That's the question number one. Question number two, if you ask people within the organization, what are the values of your organization? 99.9% will not know how to list the values. So this shows the crack in the culture itself. Speaking about that, so it's all about the talents. It's all about how we capitalize on that, how we ensure that people use the talent. Because when you use your talent, it's different than when you are needing a job. Some people apply for a job, they believe they have the skills for it, but that's not actually where their strong suit is. If we find where they're strong, we may be able to actually use them better within the organization, even if there's no career path. Because again, it's the bureaucracy. That's what we're trying to diffuse. The bureaucracy of, well, if you're working as a project manager, so your only path is either you become a senior project manager, then a program manager, then program director, or you just shift career. It's not about shifting career. When we talk about digital transformation today, there's nothing called shifting career. It's all connected at the end of the day. So why do you expect that you have solutions that are connected, but people that are disconnected? That's where HR agility links together.
Interesting. We are about running out of time. So I have a last question for you, Khalid. I mean, you mentioned, I mean, this notion of people expressing the talent outside of their specific area of responsibility and allowing them to do it and becoming more agile. So in this context, how do you track performance of those people? If you ask them, I mean, if they have a specific responsibility, but they are expressing their talent outside of the specific responsibility, how are you able to track their performance in the right way?
There's the safe way of doing it and the unsafe way of doing it, like organizations or my previous client like to call it. Mm-hmm. So one of the organizations I was working with, I said, well, let's try with one team and eliminate the KPIs. He said, what? We can't do that. That's not possible. How can we eliminate KPIs? I told him, no. We're going to change it to a single KPI. And that KPI is for the team getting the job done. And that's it. He said, well, how will we identify who takes more than who? And I said, well, that's the mindset we need to change. And we did that, and we relied on what we call the Agile governance. And one of there are 4 pillars in the Agile governance, which is the iterative and incremental approach, lean thinking, pull principle, and empirical process control. So basically the pull principle is where everybody showcases their work to everybody else. So it's not that I'm just showcasing my work to my managers for him to see how well I'm doing. No, everybody gets to see what everybody's doing. So they will be self-organizing, which is actually one of the 12 principles of Agile, instead of creating the competition of me not being transparent, which is the empirical process that I was talking about, and being transparent in what we do or how we do our job because we want to be unique. Actually, I'm going to be displaying it, and it's going to be a healthier competition where we're all showing what we do. And if something is said outside of that meetup where we display our work, the leader's obligation at the time is to make it visible. So they all share the ideas. And it will show with the pull principle that I'm not waiting for the push technique. I'm not waiting for someone to give me updates or to give me a progress report. Everybody on a specific system, they're able to see what everybody is doing at any time. The manager's there, leader's there, the product manager's there, he's not there. I'm able to pull whatever information that I need. So by default, it will show who is working and who is not. Having that concept will eliminate the thought of the manager having favorites, because everything has been displayed. I have proof of who has been doing this work and who has not been doing this work. So it's more of having the leader there as coaching, as empowering the people more than he is just taking the feedback from here and here and here and there. Again, it's not about eliminating KPIs that we will not have any objectives. No, not at all. We will still have those. But the building of the KPIs, that's why we have a total workshop about what we call Agile Kpis. And we build the KPIs together. So we sit with the team and we say, okay, these are the objectives that are assigned to us by management or by the organization based on the strategy, based on the values. So I'm capitalizing on people understanding the values and the strategy of the organization at a specific time. And then I tell them, how do you see our KPIs to be done or built to meet these objectives? So here you're actually getting their buy-in, that they are the ones setting the tone and the KPIs for themselves and for the team. So this will increase their engagement. It will increase their ownership and responsibility. And at the same time, when they come to complain, well, you guys, we all took this upon together. I did not do this on my own. So it's a shared responsibility. So the leader does not become in a hierarchy anymore. He becomes part of the team. So this negates all of the training that we're saying, do this, do that. It's as simple as that. It's a very simple practice. Ask your team, do you understand the KPIs? Let's do it together. It's as simple as that. They will start asking the questions, and you will be able to see that as a leader, where the gaps are, where do you need to invest the time, and so on. So that's how I would measure the performance, having the pull technique, making people come up with the KPIs, build the KPIs with each other. So it will be a more fair challenge. It will be a more healthier competition.
Okay. Thank you, Khalid. Last question for you too, Chris, as we are running short of time now. I mean, what is your own experience as HR director in embedding these Agile KPIs as part of the culture of an organization?
Performance management, yeah. I think the theme coming through here is technology platforms, processes, gizmos. They can never be a substitute. They are a helpful tool, but they're never a substitute for a genuine, interested human conversation. To get performance management embedded, focus heavily on training your managers to have those difficult conversations. I don't care which organization, how large or small, the one thing consistently that every manager tells me they struggle with is having those difficult conversations around performance. And really the objective here, it's very easy to get rid of someone. It's far easier to get rid of somebody and to beat them up over performance than it is to transform, and it is to turn around. And so the role of manager as a listener, as a coach, and as a mentor is something that we double down and overinvest in. And then, having those conversations regularly. And again, it's about the quality of the discussion, not about the paperwork. So I would say, invest in training people to have those conversations and give them the skills and the tool sets, because, your managers, 80% of your experience of the company culture comes directly from your line managers. It's a cliche. People join companies and they leave managers. Managers have that much impact in a business that the investment for me has to be in skilling them to have those thoughtful, nuanced, sensitive conversations. That the result is an increased performance and an increased capability, and that pays, that pays dividends across the organization.
Thank you very much, Chris. Very insightful. I think we're coming to the end of our session. So I think it's time now. If we still have 5 minutes, we're happy to take any question from the audience. In the meantime, while waiting, if someone is raising any question, I'd like to mention to you that at the end of the session, you're going to have a small survey. We're going to share with you a small survey of 3 questions to understand to what extent this was useful for you. And also for the ones that could be interested, tomorrow we're going to have a demo session on the platform to understand how to use Outvise to get an agile access to talent. This will happen at 11 a.m. European time, and we are sharing the registration link in the chat right now. Any question? I'm not seeing it. You can raise it through the chat or through the question and answer. Okay, so questions, new message, let's see. Oh, that was the registration link. Okay, so no question means that everything was very clear. So thank you very much to all of you, both the assistants, but especially our guests, Chris and Khalid. Thank you very much for your time today and for having shared all those insights and know-how about how to make an organization more agile and to drive this transformation from the HR area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye now.